Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. This is L3's Viewers Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangoes of South Florida. And today's date is Thursday, July 5th, 2018. Yeah, it's cooled down a little bit. I was going to start to do a show in the middle, early evening to be exact, and late afternoon, early evening. I was like a little bit tired. I was ready to fall asleep and get like brain farted out, you would say. So it's all well and good, and I'm just along the new river of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, just hanging out and enjoying the weather. Right now it's nice and comfortable, I would say, to be very sincere. And I just went out yesterday on Independence Day, so celebrate 242 years of the United States of America's birth. Declaration seceded from Great Britain, but secession from other ways may call treasonous, right? Well, the cool thing about it was I have two American flags with me. I was going to do a third one, but I said, nah, two is good enough because the rod I had was like too short, too small for it. So I was like 3x5, not poly, cotton, nylon style flags. I had of course, the United States flag, and below that was a defaced United Nations flag with the symbol going across, like so anti-UN, no UN, death to the New World Order kind of symbol, you would say. And I was walking around along the new river in Los Olas and onto the beach. Went back and forth a couple of times, and I got a lot of good compliments, people taking photos of it. And of course, you have a few naysayers, oh, what, no UN, or something really, like, I'm not judging, but like pretty clueless in good faith. But we'll always tell folks this: do your homework on the United Nations. Okay, go on their own website, UN.org. You'd be surprised what this tyrannical entities wants to do. And if you hear some of my past podcast shows, I did address stuff the UN peacekeeping troops murdering Haitians and people in Africa and Rwanda and all that, just to give you an example. And what's sad, because not everyone in there are bad people, but you got the higher ups trying to control everyone. Like, you're doing a good job for the world favor, but in reality, is this another global entity? But definitely look what they do, and you'd be surprised. So always examine the fine print. Hey, when it comes to government as a whole, I don't trust it, period, including the government within the United States as well. But the fact was this: when I display this on Independence Day, I always pay homage to the 56 men that signed the Declaration and saying natural born rights are considered inalienable. All right, and I always exercise that to the fullest: freedom of speech, right to bear arms, all that. And the Bill of Rights is mainly that, reflection of your natural born rights, especially the Ninth Amendment, the enumerated rights. And so, but you got these other politicians who want to say, oh yeah, we know more than you because we're lawyers. I just tell them they suck at it, all right? Just to be very frank. And I was like watching this video earlier today from the Freedom Outpost, and talked about some protests they had in San Diego. And of course, you had a lot of folks out there want to get rid of ICE. Don't get me wrong, I'm real critical of them on certain areas. But you got other folks that want to protect the borders and all that, and they'd be called racists, Nazis, and so forth. So the whole thing is, it really amazes me. A lot of these individuals that like trying to call these individuals out, you should look at the Club of Rome, and because the Club of Rome, their main agenda is to use illegal immigration or asylum seekers, like people just want the other countries. That's what they create the North American Union, European Union, and all that. And the fact is, too, a lot of these people, not all, but a lot of these people are considered political pawns, and that's a real shame. And the question, someone made some sense: how come they didn't go to the consulates or the embassies within those countries, in Central America and Mexico and all that? Because I know a lot of them came from Central America and they're going up, and they didn't seek asylum around there. So that's a real interesting. Those are questions. And if you heard my past show, the naturalization uniform laws, Congress is Congress's job, not Donald Trump. And don't get me wrong, people know me enough times. I'm real critical of Trump in certain areas. Especially I post stuff on Facebook about the internet tax, and he does a great job. Do internet tax, states can do sales tax. Hey, in Florida, I say no to it, all right, just to give you guys my intake. So it's really, and what's really disturbing, one of the ralliers that attacked a elderly man, shoved him on the ground to try to take his sign. And it doesn't matter on a principle basis. That is completely unacceptable. It should be condemned. All right, I really condemn that. It doesn't matter if it's people supports open borders. You don't shove an elderly person on the ground. And that's why people like that are more than cowards, okay? Blatant cowards. So that's one of the things I condemn with a passion. And it was really pathetic, too, when they arrested the elderly man. It looks like they had, of course, they were possible disorderly conduct. All the people that support the open borders all put, yeah! I'm like, that's disgusting. You know, all you folks need to start growing up, start dwelling in the past and giving people these guilt trips, because you are part of the mind control program. They know the people that you support don't give a damn about you. It doesn't matter if you're white Anglo-Saxon, all right? Because the fact is, it is all this hype and hoopla, and they're doing things behind our backs. So it's one of the areas you have to really look at. It is a Club of Rome agenda you're supporting and don't even know it. And I'm not the one going to say God bless Donald Trump either. But I'm just looking at the bigger picture. So that's enough of that. I'm not going to stretch the daylights of it. I do digress at times and boldly admit that. So I'm going to be doing a couple of topics, and they're pretty long, okay, to be very frank. So just sit back, relax, chill, or if you can't stand my voice, you can go on the footnotes and read it for yourselves. First thing I'm going to be talking about came from Covert Politics. And geopolitics.co, that's the name of that's the website address. And it's about President Roberto Duterte from the Philippines. It says, will Duterte survive versus the Jesuit, CIA, and communists? And it's a good article here, and it's real long, so just kick back and mellow. You won't be disappointed. It says here, while the Philippines is undergoing its own brand of peaceful reforms, it cannot be denied that the defeated agents of the imperial crown, the puppet masters, are still inside the country, trying their best to malign the president from time to time. Fortunately, the president is not letting every shot in the bow unanswered. He recently asked the most fundamental question, who is this stupid God? Which reminds us of the good old George Carlin. The latest tit and tat is sure to occupy the airwaves for some time, but it's always good to remind the country of how the Jesuits operate through the CIA and various NGOs to undermine even the most popular government in the country to date. There is an ongoing effort to forge a unified action between the Vatican Church and the communists to topple Duterte from power. This should not come as a surprise looking back the country's history with the foreign occupiers. This should also explain why the CPP founder, Jose Masasan, is enjoying his retirement in Europe instead of North Korea or China. While his cadres provide the funding through the revolutionary taxes regularly collected through the bandery in the countryside, it is not too far-fetched to say that the church is providing support to the communist organization, considering the fact that several of its priests have acknowledged themselves to be members of the movement. A la Pope Francis, New World Order asset, correct? The Philippines' most popular president ever is doing his best to wake up his people to the true nature of the enemy by shaking the foundation of the country's subservience to the Vatican. Will he survive the last 4 years of his term? I'll tell you this. You can say whatever you want about this man, but at least he had the courage to call these individuals out. And I've been watching some of the stuff from the news videos and all that. He's hilarious, but you know what? I give it to him, man. I can't blame him one bit. So, if he gets taken out, that'll be the biggest mistake the order has done since the new millennium, the beginning of the new millennium, when they were responsible for the attacks on September 11, 2001, and the murder of William Cooper, who the author of Behold a Pale Horse, and did a show called The Hour of the Time. I believe it's still on the air once in a while. I haven't really checked them out as recently, but if you go to houroftheTime.com, it's a real good website. And the guy was a real SOB and a hothead, but when it came to information, it was very, very good. And he recommended everyone do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. And he's absolutely correct. So we're going to talk about the history of the Philippines, the CIA's involvement in covert operations, and the CIA's hidden history in the Philippines. It is by Ronald G. Cimbalom. So, and it says here, for a long time, Manila has been the station, if not the regional headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency for Southeast Asia. This perhaps so because the Philippines has always been regarded as a stronghold of the U.S. imperial power in Asia. Since the Americanized Filipinos were under the spell of American culture, they were easy to recruit without realizing that they are committing treason to their own people and country. And from the beginning of the 20th century to 1992, there were U.S. military bases, the mighty symbols and infrastructure of American power. CIA human intelligence assets in Manila are said to have provided vital information at crucial times. According to declassified documents under the Freedom of Information Act on September 17, 1972, a CIA asset in the Philippines who was in the inner circle of Marcos informed the CIA station in Manila that Ferdinand Marcos was planning to proclaim martial law on September 21st, 1972. The CIA station in Manila was also provided an advanced copy of a Proclamation 1081, the proclamation that declared martial law in the country, and a list of the individuals whom Marcos planned to arrest and imprison upon the declaration of military rule. I would like to mention, without going into any conclusions, that so accurate was the CIA's assessment about the September 21st, 1972 declaration of the martial rule that it boosted the prestige of the CIA station in Manila. Upon his retirement a few years later, Henry by road, the American ambassador to Manila when martial law was declared, was honored by the CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia, a tribute that is said to be very rarely to any retiring ambassador. Also in 1982, the CIA was able to verify from a high-ranking Philippine immigration officer the names of the two doctors who visited the Philippines to treat Marcos for kidney failure, giving the CIA a clear picture of Marcos' health problems. It is important to expose U.S. imperialism's callous apparatus in the Philippines. If the activities of the sinister agency are not meticulously documented, there is a tendency to mythologize or even Hollywoodize its notoriety and crimes against the Filipino people and Philippine national sovereignty. The CIA is a covert overseas intelligence agency of the United States government and is likewise an action-oriented vehicle of American foreign and military policy. The 1975 Church Committee report of the U.S. Congressional investigations into the CIA's covert activities abroad revealed how countless foreign governments were overthrown by the CIA, how the CIA instigated a military coup d'etat and assassinated foreign political leaders like Chilean President Salvador Allende, who merely tried to safeguard the interests of their country, and how special ops and paramilitary campaigns contributed to the death, directly or indirectly, of millions of people as a result of those actions. And that occurred, the attacks occurred on September 11th, 1973, which Henry Kissinger was involved. All right? So, and it's actually during that time, the Chilean government wanted to extradite Henry Kissinger for war crimes. However, and look what happened on September 11th, 28 years later, 2001. So they went in the back pages, to be exact, not front page news. The 1974-75 U.S. congressional investigations also covered CIA intervention in domestic politics of target countries. Yes, you are hearing the drawbridge going down. From the overthrow of government, attempted assassinations to subsidize and financial support for the media, political parties, trade unions, universities, and business associations, all designed to callously influence foreign governments, events, organizations, or persons in support of U.S. foreign policy. The CIA has gone beyond its original mission of gathering intelligence and was conducting mafia-type operations not only in its own territory, but against foreign governments and their leaders. I can say one thing, man, the founding fathers are running the graves, including John Jay as well. I will continue on here. Doing covert action that undermines Philippine national sovereignty and genuine democracy in order to prop up the tiny pro-U.S. oligarchical minority that has concerned most of the wealth in their poor country is what the CIA is all about and is the reason for its existence. It is no longer just a collection of analysts of foreign intelligence, which is officially it mandates under the U.S. National Security Act of 1947 that the CIA created. The CIA in the Philippines has engaged in countless covert operations for intervention and dirty tricks, particularly in Philippine domestic politics. All on top of all this is the U.S. diplomatic mission, especially the political section that is a favorite cover for many CIA operatives. CIA front companies also provided an additional but convenient layer for covert or operatives assigned overseas in general, which wherever you find big business interests like Coca-Cola, Ford, Citicorp, United Fruit, Nike, etc. Also, you find a very active CIA, but the covers often used are diversified. Desmond Fitzgerald, for instance, a former CIA chief of station in Manila, was said to have fronted as a legitimate businessman of an American multinational company. Joseph Smith, a top CIA agent assigned to the Philippines in early 1960s, posed as a civilian employee of the Clark's Air Force Base's 13th Air Force Southeast Asia Regional Survey Unit. On the other hand, CIA operative Gabriel Kaplan's initial cover was merely more civilian with the CIA-created Asia Foundation, formerly the Committee for Free Asia. And looks like the bridge is went down and it's gonna reopen for the people going over it. Then later, as resident director of another CIA creation, the compadre, both of which we shall be dealing with more extensively later. On the other hand, CIA operative David Sternberg fronted as a foreign correspondent for an American newspaper based in Boston, the Christian Science Monitor. Ain't that nice? Exactly. All right, we'll just go on here. When he assisted Gabriel Kaplan in managing the presidential campaign of Ramon Magsaysay in the 50s, the agency's asset and technical infrastructure in Manila had been drastically affected by the withdrawal of the bases by 1992 because before this, the CIA operated jointly with the Defense Intelligence Agency major listening posts into most of Indochina and southern China. The CIA-DIA structure, called the Strategic Warning Staff, is headquartered in the U.S. Department of Defense, or Pentagon, and operated a number of similar posts as the one in Manila. The Manila station includes very sizable logistical capabilities for a wide range of clandestine operations against Asian governments. The loss of the bases in the Philippines were a tremendous blow to the CIA's Asian infrastructure, if not a major setback. For the mid-1950s, the U.S. bases in the Philippines served as an operational headquarters for Operation Brotherhood, which operated in Indochina under the direct supervision of the CIA's Colonel Edward Lansdale and Lucian Conian. And it involved several Filipinos who were recruited and trained by the CIA. Lansdale was a classic CIA operative in Southeast Asia who was romanticized in Graham Greene's novel The Quiet American. Lansdale was even appointed by former President Ramon Magsaysay as his military advisor, but was in fact his speechwriter as well. What a great guy, right? Who determined Magsaysay's foreign and military policy. So successful was the CIA in pulling the strings through Lansdale that in 1954 a high-level U.S. committee reported that American policy in Southeast Asia was most effectively represented in the Philippines, where any expanded program of Western influence may best be launched. For examples of such programs were the Freedom Company of the Philippines, Eastern Construction Company, and Operation Brotherhood, which provide a mechanism to permit the deployment of Filipino personnel in other Asian countries for unconventional operations covertly supported by the Philippines. The CIA also effectively used Philippine territory, particularly Clark Air Base, for the training and the launching of operatives and logistics in the late 1950s, where the U.S. covertly supported dissident Indonesian colonels in the failed armed overthrow of Indonesian President Sukarno. The CIA then established supply, training, and logistic bases on several lands in the Philippines, including airstrip in the Tawi-Tawi island of Sanga-Sanga. It's like Samba there, like the Popeye cartoon. I'm having fun here, don't worry. A CIA-owned proprietary company, the Civil Air Transport, was actively used by the CIA from Philippine territory to give a direct assistance to the Indonesian military rebel groups attempting to overthrow Indonesian President Sukarno in the late 1950s. Manila was the center of operations for the Trans-Asiatic Airlines Inc., a CIA outfit operated along the Burma-China border against the People's Republic of China, using Trans-Asiatic Airlines Inc. as a front company. The CIA recruited for this operation in the nearly 1950s several Filipino aviators who were World War II veterans, including operatives of the Armed Forces of the Philippines Military Intelligence Services, who were still in active service. In his memoir, former Philippine ambassador to Burma, Narcisco G. Reyes, narrates that one of these Filipino undercover MIS agents posed as the labor attached at the Philippine embassy in Rangoon. Even before this was formally established, the Filipino CIA undercover agent was also reporting to the American ambassador to Burma, from whom he was also getting paid. Side by side with the CIA proprietary companies, Civil Air Transport, Sea Supply Company, and Western Enterprises Company, the agency used Trans-Asiatic Airlines Inc. in an attempt to invade the People's Republic of China in the early 1950s, using the mercenary Chinese warlord General Li Mi as the leader of the invasion force. After a few skirmishes with the People's Liberation Army, General Li Mi later on retired and pocketed the U.S. financial and military assistance for an invasion against China, and they concentrated on the lucrative opium trade along the Burmese-Thai border. Ain't that nice? U.S. military advisors of the Joint U.S. Military Advisory Group and the CIA station in Manila designed and led the bloody suppression of the nationalist Hukbong Mapagpalaya and Nig Banyan, or HMB, which was vehemently opposed to the post-war parity rights amendment and the onerous military agreements with the United States. The CIA's success in crushing the peasant-based Huk Rebellion in the 1950s made its operation the model for future counterinsurgency operations in Vietnam and Latin America. Colonel Lansdale and his Filipino sidekick, Colonel Napoleon Valeriano, were later to use their counter-guerrilla experience in the Philippines for training covert operatives in Vietnam and in the U.S. Administered School of the Americas, and trained counter-guerrilla assassins for Latin America. Thus, the Philippines had become the CIA's prototype in successful covert operations and psychological warfare. After his stint in the Philippines using propaganda, side wars, and deception against the Huk movement, Lansdale was then assigned in Vietnam to wage military, political, and psychological warfare. It was Lansdale's view that the tactics that he used to solve the problem in the Philippines were applicable to Vietnam. He was wrong. In 1975, after 2 decades of protracted warfare, the Vietnamese people defeated the strongest superpower on earth. The CIA's actions and activities in its Manila station had never been limited to information gathering. Information gathering is but a part of an offensive strategy to attack, neutralize, and undermine any organization, institution, personality, or activity considered a danger to the stability and power of the United States. The late Senator Claro M. Recto was believed to have been a victim of the CIA's dirty tricks department because of his staunch crusade against the U.S. military bases in the Philippines. It is now a well-documented fact that General Ralph B. Lovett, then the CIA station chief in Manila, and the U.S. ambassador, Admiral Raymond A. Spurs, had discussed a plan to assassinate Recto using a vial of poison. A few years later, Recto was to die mysteriously of a heart attack, though he had not known heart ailment. In Rome, after an appointment with two Caucasians in business suits, before this, the CIA had made every effort to assure the defeat of Recto in the 1957 presidential election, wherein the CIA manufactured and distributed defective condoms labeled that said, "Courtesy of Claro M. Recto, the people's friend." Could it be that Recto was a victim of the CIA's covert operations, or what they call an executive action against those perceived as dangerous enemies of the United States? Interesting question there, right? It was also during the time of Recto and the Hooks that the CIA covertly sponsored the Security Training Center as counter subversion, counter guerrilla, and psychological warfare school on the outskirts of Manila. Excuse me here. I'll continue on. CIA funds concentrated on the sensitive area of rural development, and funds were channeled to the National Movement of Free Elections, community centers, the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement, and a rural development project called a Committee for Philippine Action Development, Reconstruction, and Education, which acronym is CAPADRE, through CIA fronts and conduits like the Catherwood Foundation and the Committee for Free Asia, later renamed Asia Foundation. In the late 1980s, the CIA assigned Vietnam veterans U.S. General John Siglom to organize anti-communist vigilante groups all over the country for mass terror, particularly as part of the Philippines government total war policy against people's movement. General Siglom posed as an American treasure hunter, even to secure and all necessary official permits for the treasure hunting in the Philippines. Another operative active in the total war operations in the Philippines was Vietnam counterinsurgency specialist Colonel James Rowe, Joint U.S. Military Advisory Group advisor, whose cover was blown off when he was ambushed in 1989 by urban guerrillas in the New People's Army of Tamog Avenue, Quezon City. Rowe was calliously involved in the organization of the anti-communist death squads like Al-Zamaza and vigilante groups patterned after Operation Phoenix in Vietnam, which had the objective of eliminating legal and semi-legal mass activists and their political sympathizers that constitute the political infrastructure of the insurgency movement. The CIA lost its huge telecommunications installation at Clark Air Base at the regional relay station when the Philippine State Senate rejected on September 16, 1991, the proposed treaty for the base's renewal. Before 1970, according to a former CIA operative, the sprawling Subic Naval Base was the site on a China operations group of the CIA. The agency even constructed 100 expensive modern homes, a 2 large-story office building, and a big warehouse in Subic Bay. There is, however, a vital covert installation. The CIA was able to retain and maintain the Regional Service Air Center, located along Roxas Boulevard in Manila at the seafront compound about a mile south of the U.S. Embassy. The RSC fronts as a facility of the United States Information Service. Formerly called the U.S. International Communications Agency, this ultra-modern printing facility functions as a CIA propaganda plant. It has the ability to produce large quantities of high-quality color offset magazines, posters, leaflets, and the like. in at least 14 languages. During the Vietnam War, the RSC was seizedly involved in economic sabotage against the Democratic Republic of Vietnam or North Vietnam. The RSC was involved counterfeiting North Vietnamese currency, which were all airdropped all over the DRV to sabotage the economy and weaken the country's resistance. The CIA's Technical Service Division maintains close liaison with the RSC, which still actively operates within the seafront compound along Roxas Boulevard. The post-Vietnam War and later on the post-base era has only increased the importance of Manila as a major listening post and regional headquarters of the agency. A former junior case officer of the CIA, Janie Bruckner, who was stationed in Manila, described the capital city of the Philippines as a wild place for CIA operatives who spent a lot of time in bars, sex shows, and brothels. This was because, according to her, the standard CIA procedure for recruiting targets was to get them drunk, get them laid, and then get them to the agency's dole. Bruckner was an attractive but determined blonde who claimed to have developed assets in both the government and Communist Party during her assignment to the Philippines. Bruckner was also a very productive recruiter who, as a handler, poured in assets, and as a CIA case officer, claims to be able to make her targets confess everything. You can take care of them, Bruckner recalls, and they tell you their fears and nightmares, and I'm good at people depending on me. In fact, her targets, especially high-ranking Philippine government officials, often proposition her. So you can say she's a very good entrapper, okay? So trapnet or entice to entrapness. So she'd be called a Trapaholics Anonymous, you know? I'll continue on here. On cultural fronts, CIA has long utilized in the Philippines sophisticated subtool means for candidates propaganda such as the manipulation of trade unions and cultural organizations rather than heavy-handed activities such as paramilitary operations, political assassinations, and coups, as they have done extensively in Africa, Latin America, and Vietnam. During my interview in 1996 with Ralph McGee, a former CIA agent, and other former CIA operatives assigned to the Manila station, I was told that the CIA had many unheralded successes in the Philippines, such as the manipulation of the trade union movement through the Asian American Free Labor Institute and through funds which are channeled through the USAID, Asia Foundation for the National Endowment for Democracy. In a recent article in the Journal of Contemporary Asia, American sociologist James Petrus described how progressive non-government organizations can be neutralized, if not cooped, through U.S. government, big business-backed funding agencies, or CIA fronts and conduits masquerading as foundations. The purpose, according to Petrus, is to mystify and deflect discontent away from direct attacks on the corporate banking structure and the profits toward local micro projects that avoids class analysts of imperialism and capitalist exploitation. Neoliberalism today, according to Petrus, encourages NGOs to emphasize projects, not movements. They mobilize people to produce at the margins, not to struggle the controls and the means of production and wealth. They focus on the technical, financial aspects of projects, not on structural conditions that shape the everyday lives of people, while using the language of the left, such as people empowerment, gender equality, sustainable development, etc. These NGOs, funded by USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy, as NAD, Asia Foundation, etc., have become linked to the framework of collaboration with donors and even with government agencies with whom they have partnerships that subordinate activity to non-confrontational politics rather than militant mass mobilization. It sounds interesting to see right now about, gender equality, people empowerment, sustainable development. I see it right around here. So you think these folks are doing the same? These people who are being activists right now on these areas are being funded by these same organizations? I wouldn't be surprised. I will proceed. It must be emphasized that the U.S. places high premium on the ideological legitimation of its continuing neo-colonial domination over the Philippines, and as such, depends heavily on a U.S. financed and U.S. sponsored institution, especially on the ideological front. Thus, grants are generally poured in by such agencies such as USAID, NED, Asia Foundation, and the big business-sponsored Ford Foundation. The objective is to constantly lure and lure masses into the elite-dominated electoral process, thus legitimizing the neoliberal economic and its political apparatus, producing a fragile social peace and a peaceful mechanism for the competition among the Filipino elite and oligarchy. In his book, Colonialism in Algeria, titled The Wretch of the Earth, Frantz Fanon wrote, this is what he had to say: colonialism is not satisfied merely with holding a people in its grip and emptying the native's brain on all form and content. By a kind of pervert logic, it turns to the past of the people and distorts the figures and destroys it. Very similar to Edward Bernays' playbook propaganda, right? One of the most critical moments of the CIA station in Manila was immediate post-Marcos years, when they tried to dissociate U.S. links with the Marcoses and politically influence the contours of the post-Marcos era. Financial, technical, and political support for the pro-U.S. agents of the influence assured the dominance of pro-U.S. local elites and institutions as a counterweight to the progressive and imperialist anti-Marcos forces that threatened to define and restructure the architect of the post-Marcos neo-colonial regime. USAID was direct to grant the Trade Union of Congress of the Philippines, TUCP, with a generous financing so it could formulate a position paper of an economic program anchored on the partnership between labor and capital. USAID even temporarily set up an Hungarian reform office working closely at UTCP offices. Political analysts of the CIA and USAID wanted to design an Hungarian reform program that would not disrupt the Argos export sector and one which would be synchronized with this counterinsurgency program and diffuse peasant unrest. The CIA and U.S. military advisors also want a deeper role in the design of the command of counterinsurgency. These people were supplemented by the so-called democracy promotion initiative of the NED, which poured in heavy funding for TUCP, NAMFREL, and the Women's Movement for the Nurturing Democracy, and the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The NED gave a total of $9 million from 1984 to 1990 to these institutions and organizations. Following the ousters of Marcos, the U.S. is set about to transform the new armed forces of the Philippines into an effective counterinsurgency force that would integrate military, political, economic, and social initiatives, including board civic actions, campaigns, psychological operations, military aid, and training. It was a massive comeback of the low-intensity conflict years of the Magsaysay Lansdale era. Between 1987 and 1990, Washington reportedly authorized stepped up counter CIA operations against the left in the Philippines, including a $10 million association to the AFP for enhanced intelligence gathering operations. There was also an increase in numbers of CIA personnel from 115 to 127, mostly attached as diplomats to the U.S. Embassy in Manila. In general, the U.S. military and economic aid are used quite effectively, that they remain key elements of the policy in the Philippines. The CIA also handles political aid and political matters. This means, according to CIA's intelligence memorandum of the 1965 Philippine presidential election, for instance, assuring that the various international candidates who are acceptable and to the U.S. should be West-orientated and pledge to continue close and equitable relations with the U.S. and the West on the matters of mutual interest. The CIA station also conducts widespread covert operations, among them stage-managed national elections to assure a preferred U.S. outcome, payoffs to government officials under the guise of grants, financing for favored business and civic groups, and pro-U.S. propaganda campaigns among the population. The supply of intelligence information on activists and dissidents to the armed forces of the Philippines, and so on. Look at that. So if you're a critic, you're a target. Absolutely. Among the most prominent CIA fronts in Manila is the Asian Foundation, with offices at Magallanes Village, Makati. According to former U.S. State Department bureaucrat William Blum in a recent book, the Asian Foundation is the principal CIA front and funding conduit in Asia. The Asian Foundation funds and supports anti-communist groups or influential personalities, i.e. academics, journalists, local officials, etc., and institutions. According to former executive assistant to CIA's deputy director for operations, Victor Marchetti, in his book, The CIA and the Cult of Allegiance, the Asian Foundation had the objective to decimate throughout Asia a negative vision of mainland China, North Vietnam, and North Korea. New York Times investigative journalist Raymond Bonner has also identified the Asian Foundation as a CIA creation and front in one of his books, Waltzing with the Dictator, The Marxists and the Making of American Policy. My interviews with former CIA operatives in the Philippines in 1996 confirmed active use for the foundation for the agency. But the most credible and authoritative source that I have come across identifying the Asia Foundation as the CIA front and conduit is Marchetti's book, where the CIA Asia Foundation link is defined in no certain terms. Another organization heavily subsidized by the CIA was the Asia Foundation, established by the agency CIA in 1956 with a carefully chosen board of directors. The foundation was designed to promote academic and private interests in the East. It sponsored scholarly research and supported conferences and symposia, and ran academic exchange programs and CIA subsidies that reached $88 million a year. While most of the foundation's activities were legitimate, the CIA also used it to recruit foreign agents and new officers. Although the foundation often served as a cover for counterterrorism operations, its main purpose was to promote the spread of ideas which were anti-communist and pro-American, sometimes subtly and stringently designed and justified at budget time as an overseas propaganda operation. The Asia Foundation was also regularly guilty of propagandizing the people with agencies' views of Asia. The agency's connection with the Asia connection came to light just after the 1967 exposure of CIA subsidies to the American National Student Association. The foundation clearly was one of the organizations the CIA was banned from financing, and under recommendations of the Kassenbach Committee. This decision was made to end CIA funding. A complete cutoff after 1967 would have forced the foundation to shut down. So the agency made it the beneficiary of a large severance payment in order to give it a couple of years to develop alternative sources of funding. Assuming the CIA has not resumed covert funding, the Asia Foundation has apparently made itself self-sufficient now. During the 1960s, the CIA developed proprietary companies for use in propaganda operations. These proprietaries are more compact proprietaries and more covert than the now exposed fronts like Asia Foundation and Radio Free Europe. The CIA-linked Asia Foundation has been long active in the Philippines. It has generously funded academic seminars, researches, study tours, and conferences in most of the leading Philippine universities. So I will continue on here, most especially among many colleagues in the programs at the University of Philippines. You name it, they have their fingers stuck into it. Many non-government organizations, journalists, local governments, and civic organizations have their projects funded by Asia Foundation. This is what makes it strategic and well-placed, thus naturally a matter of great concern and alarm to friends and colleagues of both in the academic and NGO sector who may be very upset by this information on the origins and CIA links of Asia Foundation. But I do not invent this issue about the CIA-created Asia Foundation. I merely documented the previous testimony from mostly open sources. It is part of the CIA's history in this country, which I have documented from the accounts of former CIA agents and operatives. Many recipients of Asia Foundation grants, as well as the Filipino staff of the Asia Foundation in Manila, may not be aware of this notorious history. But now we know a little better. It's important to note that in 1961, the chief of the CIA's Covert Action Staff wrote this book where the most important weapons of strategic propaganda, tens of thousands of books, have been produced, subsidized, or sponsored by the CIA and its conduits, such as the Asia Foundation, in support of U.S. foreign or military policy. Very intriguing indeed, but absolutely disturbing, trying to dictate to other countries how to think and how to wipe their rear ends, right? That's why I'm real touchy when it comes to government, trying to tell me the same way. I just give the big middle finger or a penile microphone. And I say that with not being sexually harassing them too. And that's one of those areas you got to really be focused on, friends. Pay attention, look at the bigger picture, and trust me, you won't be disappointed or deceived instantaneously, obviously. So we'll be continuing on here about Project Echelon, which is on the same article, believe it or not. Together with the National Security Agency, the CIA also maintains Project Echelon, the most sophisticated and most technologically advanced eavesdropping system that has ever been devised. Throughout a relay system of satellites and spook stations in Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States, the U.S. intelligence system is able to intercept all telephone, fax, email, internet, and cell phone transmissions worldwide. Its nerve center is located at Fort Meade in Maryland, where the NSA maintains its headquarters. I don't know why people in Maryland have shut off their damn water, right? This has grave implications from both our public and private security. The National Security Agency of the United States has developed a global surveillance system, Echelon, which is a powerful electronic net operated by supercomputers that intercept, monitor, and process all phone, fax, email, and modem signals. The European Parliament, in a 1998 report entitled "An Appraisal of Technological Political Control," has little serious concerns and has recommended an intensive investigation of U.S. NSA operations. The NSA Echelon system provides awesome potential for abuse against civilian targets and governments worldwide, even against allies of the United States. I wouldn't be surprised if Stratford was involved in that, right? Israeli intelligence. I wouldn't be surprised at all. It says here, it can be recalled that under the 1999 Visiting Forces Agreement, or VFA, the coverage for special privileges and criminal immunity includes not only U.S. Armed Forces personnel, but also civilian personnel who are employed by the U.S. Armed Forces, who are accompanying the U.S. Armed Forces. These U.S. civilians include technicians of the secretive U.S. National Security Agency, which during the existence of the U.S. bases here have operated the spy communication facilities at Clark, Subic, and Camp John Hay, among others. All private citizens and government communications are intercepted and monitored by the Echelon system, according to Nikki Hager's book, Secret Power, 1986, which deals with the International Electronic Spy Network. The U.S. has not only been using the NSA Echelon system to collect political, military, and economic intelligence against its enemies, but also targets its own allies, according to Hager. There is an extensive interception of the ASEAN countries, including the Philippines. ASEAN's meetings received special attention, with both public and private communications of these countries being intercepted to reveal the topics discussed, position being taken, and policy being considered. Through the Visiting Forces Agreement, the U.S. planned to restore the Echelon system in the Philippines, which was greatly interrupted by the pullout of the U.S. military facilities and bases in 1992. The CIA heavily relies on the Echelon project for its technologically advanced special intelligence, or SINET, which is managed by the U.S. National Security Agency. Ain't that nice? God bless the New World Order. I want Big Brother to protect me, and they screw me in the end. All right, conclusion. Every CIA station is virtually an infrastructure for political, military, cultural, and even economic intervention. In the Philippines, the CIA has not only functioned as a listening post, but has been actively used to engage in covert operations, sabotage, and political intervention to undermine Philippine sovereignty and self-determined policies. Former CIA operatives in the Philippines confirmed the use of official diplomatic covers, especially in the political sections of the U.S. Embassy, which they are given secure communications, protective files, and diplomatic immunity. They have also used non-official covers disguised as businessmen in the U.S. firms. Covers under guise of U.S. Naval or Air Force personnel are now minimal after the U.S. bases and military facilities in the Philippines were dismantled. But as we can now see, the CIA has been operating with virtual impunity and has always gotten away with its deep involvement in the Philippines' domestic affairs. Shall we allow this continued intervention in the Philippine and political and economic life? I say hell no. Let them be. Let them live as they want on their own terms. We shouldn't be influencing other countries how to, in a way, and how to do. If they want freedom and liberty, they want to emulate us. That's fine, but not out of force. That's one of the areas I get really disturbed with. And if you study history and you try to change all these regimes, it's going to backfire. Great example, 1953 CIA coup attempt. And what happened? In a period of time, they got rid of Mohammed Mossadegh, who was elected prime minister. They put in the Shah. And in 1979, it all backfired. 52 American hostages. All that is called blowback. Great book, by the way, by Chalmers Johansson. Folks should check it out. Do yourselves a favor. But for Mr. President Duterte, he is trying to speak. He's trying to let the people in the Philippines know, hey, you're being screwed, manipulated, and all that. You got to wake up. So at least he may be some ragtag-looking guy, but he's having the courage to go out there. And the historical thing about the Philippines, that is downright unacceptable. And they've been that country alone has been I would say been dictatorialized even through the times of Spain. So it's like they always been through so much so used to like being imperialized or being governed by a foreign entity. And so what Duterte is trying to do is counter that. And that's why, my friends, we gotta say yes to a republic and no to an empire. And Ron Paul was correct about blowback. We gotta stop these bogus foreign policies. All right, and I can even say things going on with the whole exodus going on the borders of Mexico and the United States. We gotta stop sticking our nose in where we don't belong. That's called blowback. So I always talk about the other side as well. But look, let's leave it be. All right, that's what the New World Order wants. They want to use the United States as their patsies, their bulldogs, the hounds of hell, we can say. You gotta get out of this whole mind control ordeal. Because as far as I'm concerned, we're being financially raped by these parasites, these vampires, Orwellian vampires to be exact. So we make us feel safe. Spare me. All right, I'm gonna take a little breather. I know it's almost an hour. I'm gonna play a little song from a band called Sons of Liberty. It's called Mind Control. So check it out, and I'll be back.
Sedated and so safe. You walk around like puppets. You parrot what you see. You're victims of my mind control, addicted to TV. I am the strongest weapon. It's what I'm designed to be. A tool of propaganda to mold society. I changed the Western nations. I brought them to their knees. With constant bread and circus, we stole their liberty. Hypnotizing, it's paralyzing me. Mind control, mesmerizing, it's tantalizing me. Mind control, hypnotizing, it's paralyzing.
I love the different colors. Oh my gosh, we'll have so much fun.
All those involved in the TeknoAXE terrorists must know now. Here's your Pentagon Channel report. Poison gas, torture chambers, mass grave, less deadly technology. Radical ideology of fake Sit back, turn on the game as we rock you blind. As long as that new sitcom's on, everything is fine. I'm here to serve my masters. I do as they demand. I know of my importance in their new world order plan. Hypnotizing, it's paralyzing me. Mind control, mesmerizing, it's tantalizing me. Hypnotizing, it's paralyzing me. Mind control, mesmerizing, it's tantalizing me. Hypnotizing, it's paralyzing me.
Yeah, that was Sons of Liberty, Mind Control, and hopefully everyone can relate to that. And yeah, it's one of those things you gotta really see and for yourselves and examine everything a lot broader. Like I said before, check out that book by Eric Benes called Propaganda. You'd be surprised what they don't want us to know. And it came out in 1928, so I was like, man, 90 years ago. Still a good read. All right, so the next thing I'm going to be addressing here will be from, hold on here, from, Future of Freedom Foundation. And this one here is entitled, When Democracy Becomes a Threat to Liberty. It's from Richard M. Elbeling. And it was originally been posted on American Institute for Economic Research. So it's a very memorable site. And as it reads here, for most of the last 3 centuries, the idea of liberty and democracy have been intertwined in minds of both friends and foes of a free society. The substitution of absolute monarchies with the government representatives of the voting choices of a nation's population has been considered part and parcel with the advancement of freedom of speech and the press, the right of voluntary and peaceful association for political and numerous social, economic, and cultural reasons, and the guarding of the individual from arbitrary and unrestrained power. But what happens when an appeal to democracy becomes a smokescreen for majority tyranny and coalition politicking by special interest groups pursuing privilege and plunder? Friends of freedom, including many of those who strongly believed and fought for the representative and democratically elected government in the 18th and 19th centuries, often expressed fearful concerns that democracy could itself become a threat to liberty of many of the very people that democratic government was supposed to protect from political abuse. And even if you read the Constitution, it never said anything about democracy, nor did it say anything about democracy in the Declaration of Independence or Bill of Rights. I will continue on here. The tyrannies of minorities and majorities. In his famous essay on liberty, the British social philosopher and political economist John Stuart Mill warned that there were 3 forms of tyranny he could take on: the tyranny of the minority, the tyranny of the majority, and the tyranny of custom and tradition. The tyranny of the minority was represented by absolute monarchy, a tyranny of the one, or an oligarchy, a tyranny of the few. The tyranny, custom, and tradition could to take form of a social and psychological pressures on individuals or small groups of individuals to conform to wider communities and prejudices and narrow-mindedness, which intimidate and stifle individual thought, creativity, or peaceful behavior and chastity. He's absolutely right on that. Mill was also insistent while democracy historically was part of for a great movement for human liberty, majorities potentially could be as dictatorial and dangerous as both the ruthless and oppressive kings and princes of the past. At the moment of great collective passions and prejudices, individual freedom of speech, the press, religion, association, and private property could be voted away, reducing the isolated person to the coerced pawn and the prisoner of the political system because of sheer numbers in the electoral process. See, there's some articles here you can check out yourselves on John Mills. So it's Finkelberg, right? Finkelberg wrote. So definitely, is it Finkelberg or Engelberg? Hold on here. Embeling wrote. All right. For this reason, as many of the great social philosophers and reformers of the 1700s and 1800s were often strongly insisted that democracy, two-edged sword of liberty, or tyranny, it was necessary to restrain the powers and reach of governments through written and unwritten constitutions that limited what even majorities could directly or indirectly do through their elected representatives. Hence the role and importance in the American case of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment states clearly, categorically, no Congress shall make no law that might abridge of someone's individual freedoms, including freedom of speech, the press, religion, and peaceful to assemble, and freedoms to make grievances against the actions of government. Indeed, every one of those first 10 amendments was designed to place some restriction on the use of political power to infringe upon or deny different aspects of an individual's rights to his life, liberty, and honestly acquired property. Ambiguities of languages, nuances of interpretation, and changing attitudes have often resulted in debates, disagreements as to what and how such personal freedoms were to be understood and secured, but underlying meaning and message should be considered beyond any doubt. There are aspects to the life and rights of the individual human being that government, even majority government, should not and cannot abridge, violate, or deny. But monarchs of the past and dictators of more recently have always denied such limits on their power to command and coerce those that under their control, including prohibiting words and deeds by those over whom they have asserted their rule. They have rationalized their claim to unrestrained authority by appeal to a divine right of kings or a higher meaning of freedom, and expresses the will of the people as a whole through the tyrant's supreme power. Absolutely means get out, keep out, no trespassing. Negative, freedom equals liberty. Positive, freedom equals coercion. One of the great logistic tricks of the communists and many of the socialists of the 20th century was to try to distinguish between false and vigorous freedoms and real or social freedoms. The former were those individual freedoms expressed in the Bill of Rights, which were labeled negative freedoms, in that they merely protect a person against the aggression and coercion of others. Positive or social freedoms require government planning, regulation, and redistributive control to ensure that need rather than profit-guided production, and that the shares of income and wealth among the members of society were more equalized according to a prior notion and distributive justice. Individual freedom only requires that each person respect the life, liberty, and honesty acquired property of others, and that he follow the rule of peaceful and voluntary association in all human interactions. Beyond this negative restraints on each of us, we're all at liberty to live in our individual lives as we choose, guided by our own personal conceptions of life, meaning and purpose, and ordering and following our private affairs and dealing with others. The notion of positive or social freedom requires the active and constant intervention of the political authority into the individual voluntary interpersonal affairs of a country's citizens, precisely to command or prohibit how, when, where, and for what people may act and interact with others so as to direct and dictate certain results that those in government consider good, just, and fair. Individuals and their actions are made to subservient to and confined with the collective or community or national interest of the society as a whole, as defined and enforced by the government. A little reflection should make it clear whether these positive or social regulations and redistributive goals in the end are imposed by one or a few, a tyranny of a minority, or a done so by a democratic government claiming to speak for many or all, the tyranny of the majority. The individual who otherwise might be peaceful and non-infringing on the private actions and interactions of others is made the slave of some who say he must do and what outcomes in life will be allowed or given to him. So something like that. Yeah, so that's why it's so interesting about that aspect, is gotta be your own person, because everyone's going to manipulate as well. I'm going to continue on here. Joseph Stadler's charged that democracy is under attack. In our day and age, one of the political tricks played by the social justice warriors and the redistributive advocates is to insist that they call for demand in terms of government, economic, and social policy is really the democratic will of the majority, and any opposition or resistance to a demonstration of that person being an opponent of democracy and therefore an enemy of freedom and a free society. As an example, there is a recent article, American Democracy on the Brink, noted by economist Nobel Peace Prize winner Joseph E. Stiglitz, a professor of economics, Columbia University in New York. According to Stiglitz, a series of recent Supreme Court decisions demonstrate that democracy is in peril in America. He repeats the now thread Warren charge that we do not live in democracy today because the current occupant of the White House has lost 3 million less of the popular vote and that his opponent in the 2016 presidential election. Donald Trump won the election according to presidential electoral rules specified in the Constitution. In terms of winning electoral college, majority is shoved aside and made into an implicit accusation that the Constitution itself is a rigged any democratic institution. One wonders, however, whether John Stiglitz would be wearing sackcloth and ashes with his head bowed low if the 2016 outcome had put Hillary Clinton in the White House with an electoral college majority, but with Trump having a majority of a popular vote. Somehow I doubt it. Of course, because he's one of those drama queens. He believes that the man believes that there should be majority vote. So it's called he wants centralization. Centralization is damn right dangerous for the United States of America. And don't get me wrong, it has its issues with corporations and Big Brother and all that. But no, we gotta do a popular vote now because my Lord and Savior Hillary Clinton didn't win. Remember, it's electoral college. The whole thing is making sure that the bigger populated states do not supersede the smaller states. So it's a little bit more of a balance. All right, so this is how it is. But I know there's certain states, I think 26 states, including Florida, if whoever gets the highest votes within that state, the most votes within that state, then it could go to the electoral college votes go to that one particular candidate. This is how it is, So, American Express and the market competition. Stiglitz first charge against undemocratic capitalism in the recent Supreme Court decision in favor of American Express concerning the company's requirement that retail and other stores in which customers purchase goods with the use of a credit card not offer special discounts to buyers that use cards with lower transaction fees with their own. Stiglitz sees this court decision a corporate anti-competitiveness at the expense of the retail and the consumer, the few exploiting the many. But as the High Court reasoned, not all credit cards are equal, and therefore it is not implied for or require all companies issuing credit cards to charge the same transaction fees to stores. The bulk of American Express business involved non-revolving credit. That is, the large majority of American Express cardholders pay the full balance owed each month. Thus, the American Express does not earn extended interest income from most of its customers through installment payments. American Express customers who hold different types of company credit cards with differing levels of service, perks, and discounts tend to be on the average as the higher income brackets and spend more on various goods and services on, say, an annual basis. Thus, those shoppers paying with their American Express cards are likely to buy more and more expensive goods, thus more than making up the higher transaction fees American Express charges retailers. Furthermore, the attractiveness of many American Express cardholders' perks has competitively worked to prod other credit card companies to introduce their own versions of points for dollars spent, cashback incentives, and various consumer services. Implicitly, Staglitz seems to have in the back of his mind the artificial economics textbook notion of perfect competition, one of the unrealistic and arbitrary assumptions of which that is each seller in a market sells a product exactly like his rival's product in that market. The notion holds that the differentiate for your product from those of your competitors is somehow to act anti-competitively. Like, this guy's such a glam boy, good grief. I guess his favorite president, Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, father, the hero of neo-mercantilism, right? Yet the very notion of the competition understood as a rivalrous process is to constantly attempt to improve and distinguish your product from others. This includes offering what consumers may consider a better product that might sell for more than your competitors, precisely because it is not viewed as the same as theirs. Finally, no retailer is compelled to accept American Express card as a form of payment in their place of business. Indeed, some stores only take Visa or American Express precisely to avoid higher transaction fees from American Express. So, it's Visa and MasterCard, exactly. So that's how they do things. They choose to forego some consumer business that otherwise that could have been theirs, deciding that the cost of loss of business is less than the higher transaction fee to be paid to American Express. This reflects the diversity of choice and business decision-making in the competitive marketplace. It is not an instance of corporate anti-competitiveness. What Stiglitz wants instead is to impose his notion of competitive fairness on the others in the marketplace by compelling American Express to interact with retailers the way he thinks they should. He wants to be a nanny, right? And potentially to undermine profitability of American Express and continue to offer some features, services, and perks that make it attractive to those who voluntarily pay the annual dues for their cards. At the same time, while claiming to speak for the unsung majority of the consuming public supposedly taken advantage of by American Express, his policy prescription would serve the anti-competitive interests of American Express credit cards competitors, who would not have to work as hard to keep their customers away from one of their rivals. I think it's fun, but Mr. Stiglitz, like, who's his Lord and Savior? Did he learn how to create jobs and how to be competitive by Bernie Sanders? I'm sorry. It's like, oh yeah, Bernie Sanders is my Lord and Savior. Come on, give me a break. Some of these people are pretty damn pathetic. The undemocratic nature of compulsory unions. Stiglitz's second criticism also falls upon the recent Supreme Court decision that state and municipality employees will no longer be compelled to pay mandatory dues to public employees and teachers unions when they may not want union representation, or might oppose the political uses to which those funds are applied for political lobbying and campaigning. He raised a number of criticisms against the court's decision, including that selfish workers will choose not to pay dues and be free riders of the efforts of employee unions that improve pay, work conditions, and all government jobs. He also charged to deny that the rights to demand due payments, wherever individual public employees want union representation and political activism or not, is supposedly undemocratic. In the tradition of George Orwell's Newspeak, in his famous novel 1984, Stiglitz twists the meaning of the words to assert that union compulsion is freedom and that individual freedom of choice is employers' exploitation. For a good part of the last 100 years, labor unions, especially beginning in the 1930s, were given a relatively free hand to force workers into union membership, to have access to certain types of employment, and to restrict the number of people who would look for and find gainful employment in various sectors of the economy. In their heyday, in the middle decades, of the 20th century. Labor unions could shut down entire industries through strikes, could threaten or use violence to prevent non-union workers from taking jobs their members had to walk away from during the strike, and can use their financial clout to influence labor and other legislation in their desired directions. Compulsory unionism has been a tyranny of a minority of workers manipulating wages and work excessively at the expense of the majority labor force as a whole. Changing market dynamics have reduced union membership in the private sector from over 20% of the labor force in 1983, less than 7% of 2017. On the other hand, today union membership in the government sector is over 35%. Unions' political and financial power is heavily dependent on their ability to compel mandatory dues from public employees, many of whom are denied the freedom to express whether they, in fact, if they want to pay these dues, to have union representation. Was more democratic than allow individual workers to vote with the choice to freely belong to a union or not, and to pay dues or not. Free rider problem is a bugaboo that some economists and public policy advocates have used to justify various forms of compulsory payments of fees and dues. People in many corners of life donate money and contribute their time and energy for the furtherance of causes and activities that benefit many more than themselves. They consider themselves sufficiently important and worthwhile, even when others may choose not to participate while enjoying some of the gains from those voluntary and personal activities. There's also nothing preventing unions, including in the government sector, from excluding free riders by negotiating wage and benefits that only apply to members and not to others who have chosen to opt out of that union. Indeed, the following this path, it will soon be seen whether non-union workers decide that the benefit from joining such unions are worth the financial expense of the dues to be paid out of their salaries, and worth putting up with political use of some of their dues that they might disagree with. Instead, Staglitz, looking down on the labor affairs of ordinary workers from the Olympian perch of his academic heights, knows the real democratic choice that serves the true interests of workers better and more clearly than those public employees themselves. He may refer to the supposed imbalance between employers and individual workers that the unions are set to right. But rather than allowing those individuals to decide themselves, rather they think they need and are willing to pay for union representation against the bosses, he wants to force it down their throats. Yet he claims the voice of democratic choice. There's a thing called economic case for right to work. Well, it's interesting about that because even a person like myself is I am a union stagehand, and I did it on my own free will. And don't get me wrong, even if it means you have your disagreements, nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not going to tell people how to wipe their butts, so forth, but it's the best interest of my workers and fellow brothers and sisters. I'll give them my 2 cents. I'll calculate on all the facts. Many of them may not like me, but they respect my views. That's what counts. That's what union's supposed to be. Sticking together. Yeah, we're all going to have our disagreements. We got to be responsible for our actions on the job. We're going to be judged by we can judge our fellow workers by their actions, and be critical when we goof up or management or employer screws up on their contractual grievances. Yeah, those are areas I respect. Okay, we can make the decisions and all that. I do have a voice. But a lot of folks that complain, they don't want to take action. Well, if you're gonna speak like that, you're the same individuals. I'm gonna talk about, hell yeah, well, I'm complaining about what's going on with the government, but I can't do anything about it. That's the same mindset. Very deplorable. So, and even though Florida's a right to work state, I know how to utilize that. Okay, all you gotta do is read Article 1, Section 6 of the Florida Constitution. If you live in the state of Florida, what right to work really means. And one time, the Kravitz Center up in West Palm Beach locked out some workers because there was a big dispute. Okay, with the business agent and the board. There's some claims. However, they locked out the House people because they're represented by a union. They violated Florida's right to work law as well under Article 1, Section 6 of the state constitution. Just to give you guys a heads up. The pros and cons of unions. The whole thing is up to the individuals. And as a member, you're the union boss, not the officer. They say, oh, union boss is a business agent. Union boss, no, he's a business agent. Union boss, president, no, he's a union president. They're constitutional officers. Let me give you all those facts. You can look it up for yourselves. But you cannot force people to join. I always believe in that. So when I got people to join, it's in good faith, and I give them all the human elements too. But definitely, it's good to know about these things, because there's a lot of places out there that want to treat workers like garbage. Period. At least on a union aspect, you'd be treated as a human being. You got to implement that, exercise it. It's like life in general. It's like with government, we all have duties to tell the government off, call them out, or overthrow them when it's necessary. I'll continue on here. Free speech, versus compulsory speech. Concerning other legal case, delegates rallies against a court decision that decided in favor of licensed reproductive health centers not being forced to supply patients with information about abortion options from which they might choose. He is shocked and indignant that the court did not oppose compulsory speech on people. That is, that individuals and the organizations for which they work should not be forced to articulate ideas and present alternatives in which they may strongly disagree. The abortion issue has been and remains one of the most emotional and deeply contentious hot buttons in the public arena. Do you believe in a woman's right to choose, or do you believe in the right to life? It touches religious faith, the meaning of personhood and ownership of one's body, and a definition of the beginning of a human life. Any wide social agreement about abortion lies far ahead on the horizon, if ever, given the scientific, faith-based, and personal divisions of opinions and beliefs. To force anyone to express and explain the other side of this debatable term of what the woman might or could only be considered a major infringement on the freedom of conscience of the individual. What Staglitz also demand, in the spirit of democracy, that clinics that offer abortion services be compelled to provide literature and lecturing to their patients on how abortion is murdered and is a mortal sin that will send that woman to hell and to the arms of the devil for eternity, and to do with a serious conviction so as not to fairly bias as a woman's decision. I doubt Stiglitz considers applying the logic of his argument in such a symmetrical fashion. This issue, like the others, has little or nothing to do with democratic freedom as conveyed by Stiglitz in his article. Indeed, the emotional appeal to the democratic idea and sentiment is all a logistic sleight of hand to direct attention away from the real issue. Shall the individual have his or her freedom of choice undermined or denied in the marketplace of goods or the minds of assertion of the majority will? Whatever this majority of the members of society is real or merely smokescreen for a minority to use the democratic appeal to impose their demands on many others, as it stands as a denial and a threat to the peaceful choices and interactions of free individuals in society, is the use of democracy as a weapon against human liberty. And I have to agree with him on that. Democracy is like mob rule. We both live in a rule of law. Mr. Staglitz, he's such a ditz, okay, what stuff I'm reading according to this article. Give me a break. He's one of those guys who wants to be a native that tells you how to wipe your rear end. You know what, guys, like people like that, you just gotta flush them down the toilet. That's why freedom loving sovereign thinkers around the world should realize you're your own unique individual. Never, ever let these clowns manipulate you, con you, or try to vampirize you. One of the areas I always believe, I hear people try to give me this whole guilt trip, and I just laugh at them. I laugh and they wig, but you know why? Because I'm not going to be conned by con men or con women. Thing called psychic vampires. He says this is what this guy sounds like. Draining people's energies, think he's like the Jim Jones of freedom, but he's not. So hey, people like that, just laugh at them because you don't need them to tell you how to live. We all have our own destinies, and honor it in good faith. Wow, that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us on social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or even something interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, and of course, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, Patreon.com/LokiLuck3 with 3 eyes. Hit me at Gab, GAB.ai, Yours.org, OneWay.org, or BuddyList.co. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3@gmail.com, or to the encrypted ones, mainly with the Proton Mail account. You can contact me at LokiLuck03@ProtonMail.com. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.